sometime in October, and they seem to have some sort of falling out where they just decided to release a proof of concept. So here, okay, screw this. They're not taking me seriously enough. They said it's not that big a deal. Here you go, guys. Here's the exploit you need to go and run. And so when you release a proof of concept, one, it makes everyone stand up and they pay attention because all of a sudden attackers have got that in their arsenal and they can start using that exploit. Two, it also helps security content. If you know what the exploit is, it can write detections for it.
Welcome back.
CyberSpace.
Empirical trading. Do you know what I mean? So they're like, welcome back.
Hello and welcome back to the CyberSpace podcast. With me, your host, Josh. We are Empirical Training, and I have my fellow Empirical trainer, Big Robbie, on the call.
What's happening? Nice to be here. Lovely to be here.
And Robbie is a security consultant, former SOC leader, builds SOCs, stands them up, makes sure they're operating, and then moves on to the next one these days. So a great wealth of experience from being on the ground as a SOC analyst. That's where we met, you and I, sitting next to each other, smashing our heads against keyboards because we had a really frustrating job to start with. That just had to get done, right? You'd be pleased to know, Robbie, that job we started to do is actually getting really good now. So I should probably say what it is. It was that we reviewed the last 24 hours of log data, which started off as a PCI compliance exercise. But I still work for that same company, and they developed it now to machine learning, purely automated. Caught ransomware, caught really low and slow, like nation state level ransomware, because someone was slowly trying to create these like suspicious accounts that probably a person wouldn't have noticed. So yeah, it still works. It probably works better than it did when we were doing it.
That's cool, man. So they're just working the juicy incidents now. It's popping up. Is it still popping up on the big screen?
Yeah, it's a virtual SOC now, so people don't have. We used to work. It was a Houston company we used to work for, based. So even though we worked in the UK, they had taken that inspiration, hadn't they? NASA space station type of SOC. It was. So yeah, there is still the screen, but everyone looks at it in their own home offices now.
But no one's there. It's empty, but they're still paying for it.
No, it's sold up. Like most companies,
really?
They took the opportunity to kind of give up on lots of the offices. So, virtual SOCs, maybe a topic for another day, but there's a lot of benefits to them, right? Like the higher room pool gets bigger. It's much better for people who need certain accommodations, like neurodiverse analysts are thriving in there. Response times are getting better. Detection times are getting better. I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but I think we had a fairly mature one. Like it's been 20 plus years doing it rather than one that was like stood up a few years ago. So that probably made the transition to virtual easier. But you do get pushback from some people, right, who say, I don't want a virtual SOC. What if you've got one idiot on their own who doesn't asking anyone for help and they just go rogue and do something terrible? And those people do exist, but I think it's actually more collaborative than ever, right? Because sharing a screen is pretty easy in Teams or whatever video call you're using.
Damn, we hit the golden age, didn't we? Really though, because I don't think I would have made it anyway if I had to start again in this current time frame where a lot of companies are not doing any office time, but I just loved being there, especially me being so fresh in the industry. I was really inexperienced. Steph definitely did take a chance on me back then, and I'm always appreciative of that. And
that was our SOC director.
Yeah, having the boys and the girls in that team to just walk over and ask a question, or they come running over to your screen and give you some pearls of wisdom was so useful. Plus, I'm a people person anyway, so I loved just mucking around in the office and having a good crack. And we used to do loads of socials and go out drinking and bonding, and yeah, got some funny stories, but we're not going to share those on the podcast. But yeah, man, I loved it. That was the best time. That's my best. Like those 3 years that I was at that company was probably the best of my career, because then moved over to another company. I was in the office a little bit, then COVID hit. We're completely working from home. Now in my current role, I'm completely working from home, and it's cool, but that you don't get that family feel. Like it literally felt like a family. I was genuinely upset when I left on my last day. And we used to do birthday cards when it was people's birthdays, and we used to get presents, and It was
Do you remember
so
what you wrote
close
in my
knit.
birthday card? Do you remember what you wrote in my birthday card? It
I
was a
used to
rat.
always tell people. Oh, was it? I used to always tell people to be nasty in birthday cards. Do you remember?
Yours once said to me, "You look like you sleep on a couch. You should probably use the rest of your house."
Oh my god, that's copyright as well. Shout out Luna C. He's never going to listen to this, but
No,
yeah, man, I'm
but no,
using other people's bars.
but that's I mean that's probably another thing you stumbled upon there. That's probably the biggest loss is that the social side of it and the community
Mm.
aspect. But I think as any profession was ready to make the switch to virtual, it's got to be like security professionals, already very techy, used to being in Discord and whatever. And I bet they still have a great time on their little breakout rooms. There's one big room you can talk to, and then you can move into like smaller ones for work and I guess personal reasons as well.
The
But
meme slingers,
yeah,
they're so, oh my god, they are master meme slingers. Ellis, you know who Ellis is, don't you? He
hmm
was a masterful meme slinger. You say something to him, and 2 seconds later, he'll send back the most relatable meme to what you've just said, and it's incredible. It's a skill. You should stick it on your CV.
I bet he probably has. I bet it comes
He
up in his
probably does.
interviews. First thing he wants to talk about. But yeah, I mean, I forgot to introduce the other part of this. So the other part of the podcast is our live chat. So our community on school with a K before Robbie says it. And actually, as we were talking, I kind of saw the parallel. What we're doing is almost creating a little bit of a virtual SOC environment, right? So that support network of people you can ask those questions to, and also mess about and have a bit of a good time. Because I'm not going to tell you what we were doing before we started recording this, but we had the audience. We had a little bit of fun beforehand, messing about.
And we are messing around. We've been in this live stream for about half an hour before we hit record. So if you want to see what we get up to behind the scenes before we actually start the podcast and listen to me and Josh rapping at points, then get in school, get in the school community, school.com with a
Good.
K/cybersec. Get
Awesome.
involved. There's loads of us in there.
Love the plug. So let's go on to the topics we're going to discuss today. There's two things. I'm going to take the first part and we're going to talk about an emerging threat that I worked a lot on last week. It's the Linux cups. It might already have been superseded by another vulnerability that might be emerging at the moment as the kind of latest emerging threat, but I'm definitely going to talk about that one. I think there's some good bits to cover off. And then we're going to flip the script, and Robbie's been sharing interview tips because he used to be a hiring manager, and he's going to kind of help me out with what things I should look for as an interviewer or as an interviewee to make me, and also for you guys, so you guys can take some tips to be better and stand out. Because damn, remote is better. The chat is saying remote is better. I can see that now, but remote does make it more competitive. Right, your geolocation is no longer as necessary. You can live if you've got good internet connection, you can live on an island in Scotland, and you can work anywhere in the UK. So hey, but
Yeah, there's definitely perks to it. There's also geo restrictions as well, which is a little bit of a shame. We've already spoke about that, haven't we? About
we have, yeah.
when that might change in the future, and yeah, we live in a bit of a world where you could be anywhere, but there's going to be tax ramifications and other things that we won't get into right now. But yeah,
So
hopefully in
Rob,
the future that things will change.
Robla, have you had many interaction with this Linux vulnerability that was announced? So I think it was announced. It all hit the fan on Friday or
Was
Thursday
it the
night.
9.9
Thursday. It is.
vulnerability?
One of them is a 9.9.
CVSS.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's a critical.
Wowzers.
There's a bit of debate over it. So we'll kind of get onto that, like whether it is actually a critical or like 9.9 or not. And so I think we'll talk first about what it actually is, and then I'll kind of go into some of the background of why this is quite an interesting one, and why the devs and the security research have essentially been fighting that kind of forced this guy's hand. So let's focus on what it is. So I'll run you through the kind of basic process of it, but it's Linux systems that have cups, which cups is a remote printing service. Almost all Linux distros have it in some form. Most of them you have to enable it yourself, so you have to kind of set it up and turn it. But there are some scenarios where it's shipped as default, so you might not even know if you run a Linux machine, you might be vulnerable to it. You might have that vulnerability. And how it works is it allows a malicious attacker I should be clear, there are 4 different CVEs here, so 4 different vulnerabilities, but essentially are kind of chained together to deliver remote code execution. So that 9.9 out of 10 remote code execution tends to be the biggest of the big, because if it doesn't require any authentication, so any old person can do it who can access the vulnerable machine, and at code execution, you basically can do whatever you want. Right? You can steal data, you can install stuff, you can dump credentials. It's like it's the jackpot of what an attacker is looking for, the outcome of an exploit. But these systems, so they allowed there for remote printing jobs, and you can actually craft a request to UDP port 621, top of my head. Let me check my notes because it's important we get those things right. 631, UDP port 631, and you can say, hey, I am a printer. I love it. I love it when it starts like this. I am a printer. Add me to your list of printers. And it'll go, okay, we have remote printing turned on. I'm in charge of the printers. Welcome to our printer squad. Which does beg the question, who prints on Linux these days? I've never had to use Linux to print. There's tons of besides of different things. But anyway, besides the point.
Yeah, that's wild. Carry on.
And so once that malicious printer is installed, it can actually submit print jobs, which then get executed as code on the original machine. So that's how you say, hey, I'm a printer, I'm just going to submit things to do with printing, and then you submit code and it executes the code on the original machine. So any questions at this point, Rob? Any sound familiar?
Yeah, so I guess it could be useful to just explain to people listening that maybe aren't as technically proficient as us or some of the other people that could be listening, that the Linux server that has this particular vulnerability would have to be publicly facing, right, for the most part, for somebody to be able to access it. Obviously, if it was internally facing in a network, they would already have to have some type of internal foothold to then be able to access it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, spot on. Like you've digested that information well, because that is the caveat here. That yes, you could do that, but one, you have to have cups enabled, and there are. But I'm not going to detail how to check that on this podcast because you can Google that. But it has to be enabled. You have to be listening on that said port 631 UDP, and you have to have a hole in your firewall out to the internet that allows any old Tom, Dick, or Harry to request that printer, that machine to do a print thing. So, there. I did a showdown check, and there's about, when I looked, about my query came back 75,000 vulnerable machines that are exposed to the internet. So it's not like there's nothing. But then I also, let me quickly confirm this. I googled how many Linux distros are out there. So how many Linux users? I think is the best answer I can get. 32.8 million. So it's a tiny, tiny fraction. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
like, this is
drop in the ocean. But I'm just thinking about somebody that's listening that has like a Linux VM sitting on a VirtualBox hypervisor or VMware or something, thinking, "Oh shit, hackers are going to be able to get into my laptop now," and it's not really the case. You should be right.
You should be fine, but it could. I'd encourage you, if you are worried about that, and if you have a Linux machine, go and Google the vulnerabilities. Just type in Linux cups RCE, and you'll see the advisories per if you're running Red Hat or whatever you're running, and you can go and see what you need to check for. So there's one of them, for example, is checking the cups browsed daemon is enabled. That's one of the ways to check. So you can see if you are vulnerable. You could even exploit yourself if you're interested. Chat is saying they've got a Linux VM. Not worried, but are you going to go check it out? Yeah. So, question from the chat as well is there a way to modify it to understand exam what property should be a printer or what is an infiltrator? Yeah. Okay. So I think this question is, should there be more controls that we verify what a printer is? Yeah, but to be honest, they probably weren't thinking when they were setting up the printing service that it could be used for remote code execution. That's why these are like a list. There's 4 vulnerabilities that kind of chain together to give this impact or linked. So if somebody shipped their printer service and they didn't validate that they were real printers, yes, there are ways of doing it. I'm sure user agent will probably be there, but you can also spoof it. So I don't think it'd be a real good solution here, and probably a waste of dev time to actually implement that feature in. And what if you don't spec an actual printer, or someone makes a printer in Timbuktu and they sell it to you and it doesn't work with your machine because the dev didn't know it existed? And like, how do you go about that? It's just too much problems.
The drama never ends, does it? It's always going to be a bit of a cat and mouse game. It's new tech, it's new products,
Ooh.
0-day vulnerabilities, things going wrong, people
Mm-hmm.
reporting on it, people exploiting it, people taking advantage of it. It's
Well,
chaos.
I love how you said that, like, brand new as well, because there's been talks in some forums this has existed for 10 years, this vulnerability. So
Really?
yeah. So I wonder if we'll find any historic uses of it being exploited. But yeah, though that kind of brings me nicely on to, is this a big deal? And the point you made, maybe it's not that big a deal. And this is what I think the devs and the research were arguing about. So he announced, or they announced rather, that there was these vulnerabilities, and they were working with the CVE authority to get it documented, and the devs to get a fix ready. Because normally you announce it to the owners of said technology. They can test it, confirm, they build a fix, they ship that fix, and then you tell the world, oh yeah, we found this. In this scenario, they were gonna announce it. They had a timeline, I think, end of September, and also there was some time in October, and they seemed to have some sort of falling out where they just decided to release a proof of concept. So he had, okay, screw this, they're not taking me seriously enough. They said it's not that big a deal. Here you go, guys. Here's the exploit you need to go and run. And so when you release a proof of concept, one, it makes everyone stand up and they pay attention, because all of a sudden attackers have got that in their arsenal and they can start using that exploit. Two, it also helps security content, right? If you know what the exploit is, we can write detections for it or test existing detections, because sometimes that there's an emerging threat out. Like I think there's an NVIDIA one right now. I'm not sure there's a proof of concept out for that. So people are trying to work out, how could I cover this? And so that's a much longer process.
Yeah, this is the first time that, because I saw the article, I remember I copy and pasted the article into our school community, and it was very high level. It was just saying 9.9 critical vulnerability, more details are getting released on X date. It was something like October the 5th, or
It definitely
could have
wasn't
even been,
Friday or Thursday anyway, last
yeah,
week.
yeah,
when
exactly. And that's the first time I've ever seen that, where they were reporting on a vulnerability but actually didn't release all of the information. So yeah, it was interesting to see.
Yeah, the media jumped on it, didn't they? Yeah, because I guess the little dispute was interesting, but also the potential for this to be so huge, because it was like every Linux distro could be affected. Echoes of Log4j, when like every web server had this module Log4j that meant everyone was vulnerable. It didn't happen. I think we like to get overhyped, but for good reason as well. It means we're prepared. But yeah, buddy, that's me on the cups thing. I think that's all I wanted to cover. And if you're concerned about this vulnerability, check your distro, and you'll see that it's easy to patch. The one thing I didn't mention, sorry, Rob, quick, is that as well as the internet exploitation, you can also do it on an internal network using DNS service discovery. So it could be used for lateral movement from an inside attacker once he's gained entry. So there is that probably more complex use case, less likely to happen, but we might see that one in the future. So watch this space. Our threat hunters that in my company have yet to find anything of interest. So I don't know what it's going to look like, or even if we'll see any exploitation at all. So
Stay tuned.
TBD.
CyberSpace podcast in Neural Trader.
I want to take a little bit of time then to talk about interviews, because we've been discussing it in our gold tier community. Some of our guys that are current members in the gold tier are active in some interviews now. Some of them have even bagged themselves some roles, which is awesome. I posted a quick question to say, what are some of the common denominating questions that are always coming up in these interview settings? And obviously I can report back to some of the guys that haven't got to that stage yet, but it is important to talk about it, get the right preparation in, and see where you're at in terms of your own personal preparation for interviews, because some people will spend a little bit too much time prepping for the technical side of the interview, which is important, very important, but some people do overlook the competency side or the soft skills. side. So yeah, maybe we can take a look at both and discuss them briefly on the pod.
I like that. And we've got someone in chat as well who I know has been flying through interviews at the moment. So maybe you can drop some of your experience recently. He's right now waiting on the final verdict for a big one, which I'm really hoping he gets, as well as some other ones in the works. So yeah, share us your real experience. But Rob, which one do you want to start with first? Technical? Because that resonated with me. I definitely do the technical to death and then have to rely on my own wit for the rest of it.
Yeah, so for me, because I've been a hiring manager before, Vaughan is currently a SOC manager, so he's engaging in quite a lot of interviews at the moment. And what I like to do, I try and keep it as focused as I can be on the current role, because we all know that cybersecurity is a vast landscape in terms of knowledge. So that can just be overwhelming in of itself when you're trying to prep for an interview for the technical side of things, because I have to prep for networking questions. I have to prep for threat hunting, threat intelligence, for triage, for SOC stuff, managed services, cloud. There's so much that goes into it. It can literally just stress you out, and it shouldn't really stress you out. But what you need to do is cover the basics, try and prep as many questions as you can for all of those main topics that we've just discussed, like networks, databases, cloud. We'll go cybersecurity concepts like SIEM, EDR, triage, threat intelligence, threat hunting, threat research, incident response. If you cover those bases, then I think you're going to be well suited to you're going to bode well in the interview. But what I like to do is try and ask some open-ended questions. So start off with some, your basic static ones. You're talking about, could be anything from like, standard networking questions, like what's the three-way handshake, and encryption versus hashing and things like that. Then you're moving on to some more open-ended questions that I like to ask. Which is harder to secure, in your opinion, a server or a workstation? And then you can kind of see their workings out, because they'll be like, oh, I think maybe it's an endpoint or it's a workstation, because this is going to be the reason, human error. And some people are, oh no, it's definitely harder to secure a server. There's so many things that you need to do to be able to harden that. And it depends where it's sitting in the network, and you can really start to see the cogs turning when they're answering that question. So, and then I just keep the flow going then.
And on that, Rob, then is when, because obviously you need to assess a level of, okay, they have a level of technical understanding. Like you can't go in and get every single basic question wrong. Like someone asks you what port SSH is on, and you say it's 179. That is so wrong, and you should know that it's 22, right? What was it, 21?
Yeah, it's 22. It's 22.
It's 22. Wow, I got nervous there. That fits the question we got in the chat. So how much is the balances between that and that recall to prove that you have knowledge, and also then how you approach problems, or how you kind of use what you do know, or like give them a chance to showcase what they do know in a different problem solving scenario?
I just make it progressive. So like I mentioned before, I start off static questions. So it's kind of black and white. You can either answer them correct or you can't. Then I'm moving into these open-ended ones where there isn't really a right or wrong answer, but I'm looking for how much depth you provide to that answer. Then talk about some cybersecurity concepts. So you're asking, like, do you know what threat hunting is? Do you know what threat intelligence is? Do you know how the two work together in synergy? And then I really like to test them out from a incident triage perspective. So I'll say, I'm going to give you a bit of a scenario event, and I want to know what things you would consider when assessing if you think this is normal activity or potentially malicious activity. So yeah, you give them a scenario event, and then you're like, what things are you looking out for here to try and determine whether this is normal or whether this is malicious? And that there's so much that goes into it, and they can either not answer it very well and not take that much time to answer the question, or they can go into a lot of detail, and then that proves that they've done their homework, but it's all going to be related to the role that you're going for. We've worked in the SOC, and obviously you've moved away from that technical role, but
Mhm.
there's no point in asking questions about red teaming because they're not going for a pen testing role. So why would they need to know about that? Obviously, having red team and offensive knowledge is always going to work in your favor, and that knowledge is going to be useful and transferable to a defensive role for sure. But we've only got an hour in this interview, or maybe half an hour. So,
Yeah.
and it's so difficult to try and squeeze 20 questions and cover all bases,
Yeah.
and keep it within an hour, and ask those soft skills and allow them to ask questions at the very end. It's almost, well, there's
It's
stages
almost
to
impossible.
interviews.
It's almost
Yeah,
impossible.
yeah,
Like, I
it's
think that's
hard.
what people doing interviews don't realize is that often when you sit down as hiring managers after, so I haven't been a direct hiring manager myself, but I've assisted in interviews for technical people, and you sit there and you go, I think this person, but I could be wrong. Like it's a bit of a gut feel. It's a bit of a, I've had such a small window to evaluate them on that I know I'm taking a chance on one of these regardless. So like, if you're ever feeling demotivated, sometimes it does come down to a coin flip between two very good candidates or two good enough candidates. And maybe Rob, there's a question here about what happened. Like, does nervousness factor into this? If somebody comes in and they are bricking themselves, sweating, and they answer things nervously, does that impact their performance?
Yeah.
It
this
does.
actually this brings me back to an interview that I did with one of my bosses. I'll name him. It was Alex, and I don't think he listens, but we did an interview with this guy, and he was a lovely guy, and we were doing our standard format and asking these questions, going into these open-ended ones, and at the very end, when he finished, he sort of splurted out. He went, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I did really really badly," and he was horrendous. He was choking on his words. He was literally, like, he was shaking, and it
Had he
was,
done badly up until that point?
oh, he bombed.
Oh,
He
yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
he absolutely bombed. He couldn't get his words out. He probably knew some of the like some of the answers to the questions, but he was so nervous. I've never seen somebody that nervous. It made
Yeah,
me feel a little bit nervous, and I thrive in awkward situations. But yeah,
that's
I
tough.
wanted the ground to just swallow him up, and
Yeah.
yeah, it
I had
was it was comical.
I had an experience where I think it was the first team lead role I ever interviewed for, and so I was. It was like it was felt like a big step up. And they asked me the first question, and all the things I've been thinking about rehearsing just came out like, and I remember the interview said, "Right, stop, take a breath, and let's just
Yeah.
start this all again." And so I think, yeah, not to point fingers at you, Rob, but maybe you deserve it for this poor Alex guy. I think a good interviewer or a good boss is going to help you feel at ease. Being nervous is normal; it's expected. In fact, it'd be more problematic if you turned up and didn't have any nerves at all. Um, that's a reason not to hire someone because they might be a psychopath. But that they
Yeah.
should try and put you at ease and help you because that's ultimately what a good manager is going to be as well as somebody who develops and gets the best out of you. They will see past nervousness and give you a chance to start again. That's probably my biggest advice.
Yeah, definitely. And we give people a lot of chances. And I'm a massive advocate as well for warming people up beforehand. So I'll have a bit of a laugh and joke with people, disarm them, and try and create that comfortable environment. And I do
Mhm.
try my very best. But this time there was no warming this guy up. He was yeah, he was going 200 miles an hour. It looked like he was electrified.
And did
But
he get the job?
oh no, 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 no. He
Oh, but
didn't
you
get
remember his
past
name?
the. I can't remember his name, no, but I just remember it was so
Oh, I
bad,
thought you
and
said
he
his
had
name
a
was
really bad.
Alex. Sorry, I
No,
must
no,
have
sorry, that
misheard.
was my boss was
Ah,
Alex, the one
my
that,
bad.
yeah, we always tag team. So
Gotcha.
yeah, he had a really bad internet connection as well, and that made things worse. And
Oh
it
no.
was just
All
it
right.
was just a car crash.
Save
But
me, save me. I'm feeling for this guy. But the kind of
yeah,
segued us onto the softer questions because you said you start with that kind of make them feel, yeah, part of it's to make them feel at ease, but also I think part of them is you're assessing them from the very first thing you say as to what kind of person they are beyond what they know. So could you give us some more information on why you do that or how you do that?
yeah, definitely. So phase one is the technical side of things to get it out the way, and then once we're done with the last question, I say, right, no more technical questions, and they the shoulder the shoulders drop. The bus that was literally on the top of their shoulders has driven away. Shout out AJ. And and yeah, they kind of are even more disarmed at that point. So I'm like, right, let's talk normal now. We just want to get to know you as a person, what makes you tick, and let's take it from there. So then I'll try not to go in with the samey questions that everybody asks, or the people that ask the HR type of questions where, tell me a time where you experienced a problem and how did you overcome it. Like,
I hate that.
well, I know they're kind of really tricky questions to ask. So what I'll maybe start with is, I'll say, I'd like us to get a little bit vulnerable for a second, if possible. And what
Ooh.
I want to know is an honest weakness that is currently holding you back, that you're actively trying to work on improving. And then this is a massive tell, because some people will immediately, and then I say, please don't use an example that could be spun into a positive or
I'm a
a benefit.
perfectionist. I care
Yeah,
too much.
yeah. They'll spin it into a strength, and then what are if I had a buzzer, I would hit the buzzer and I go, go again. And
Do you just,
not in those words, but I'm like, that kind of is a strength. Try and think of an actual weakness. What's holding you back? Is there anything, some character trait or something that you may be
yeah.
struggling with? And then they
But why do you ask that?
because I want to
What
get
are you
deep.
trying to see?
I want
Yeah.
them, because I want them to be honest. It's
Mm.
about taking the mask away, because people do put on a bit of a show when they're in that interview setting. So you want to peel away those layers if you can, as Shrek would say.
So,
Onions have ogres have layers.
sort of
Um,
birthday. I can't do a donkey. I was going to do birthday cake.
I want to stick with you.
You got the accents, man. So
Yeah,
yeah, that I
so
mean,
get to know them,
it's
and then
are they honest with themselves as well? Like, can they be self aware? Because if you're not, then you can be a bit of a headstrong person that you might end up clashing with everybody because you think you're the God given talent and you know the right way to do things, and that doesn't make for a team member.
yeah, definitely. And some people will be super honest. Other people will still give you that answer that they think you want to hear. And that can be frustrating. So,
Hmm.
yeah, we're looking for some authenticity in those types of questions. And then I'll come in with a bit of a spanner in the works at some point and say, when's the last time you changed your mind about something, and what was it?
Ooh,
And they're like,
bloody every day.
yeah, and or what's something that you really felt strongly about, and then over time you've potentially changed your mind on.
Ooh, better
And
question. I like that one.
yeah, so something like that. And then other things that are just really, really silly, I'll say, what's the smallest thing in life that makes you the happiest? And then and I also will preface and say, I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to fire back at me. I don't want you to think about it. And someone will go, hot shower, and I'm like, yes, yes, I like it. Hot showers. And then so yeah.
Have you have you ever uncovered any horrific answers in that quickfire round where you've kind of seen their soul and that this part of the soul they did not want to show you? You know.
Yeah, they didn't realize that they said it. They're like, I'm not going to say
Yeah,
anything too bad." But
yeah. What would you like doing on the weekend? I like going to fascist rallies. Oh, flip.
yeah. Nah, actually, nothing too crazy.
Hmm. So I think the question from the chat was about transferable skills and soft skills. I think, to be honest, what you just talked about then, trying to understand who they are, that is you kind of assessing their soft skills to a degree as well. You talk to people? How do you think? How do you work? Is basically what you're trying to get there, right? And then the transferable stuff, I don't think we have enough time to talk about transferable skills, but I will say that every skill you've got, you can twist it in some way to transfer it to another role. It's on you to work out how to do that. Don't overdo
Yeah,
it. Like, some of them are stronger than others, but there's always a way. So don't think your experience isn't relevant. I'm sure you can find a
yeah.
way. And
There's a question that Vaughan always asks, and I'm sure he asks it now because I'll remember it, but I don't know it verbatim. But it's something along the lines of, there's a lot of skilled members in the SOC currently, and they all have their own specific skill sets. But is there something that you bring that you can bring from either your previous experience or something that is transferable that you think would benefit the team, and then they have to think outside of the box. Then it's like, oh, maybe I don't have SOC experience, but what I do have is some really strong customer relations, and that could
Mm.
fit well when speaking with the customers and interacting with, I don't know, stakeholders. Or yeah, they don't necessarily have to pick something that is super technical. It could be characteristic based, or yeah, or something that's technical that relates to their previous role. If it's something, I don't know, IT support related, or doesn't have to be anything to do with tech.
Yeah. We had a security leader who came across from a supermarket leadership role, nothing to do with tech at all, but excellent at managing people. And that was what they were looking for in the leadership role at the time. So yeah, there are many ways in. The stars might have to align for it to be a perfect role, but that's why you do loads of interviews. That's why you fire off every application you can. Rob, last one.
Yeah, man.
Why do people ask, why do you want to work for us? That's a good question.
That is a great question, well presented. And I think they're trying to find the real reason why somebody wants to work for that company. Is it just because they want some money, or is it because they're in a bit of a weird situation in their current workplace, or do they genuinely have like a passion for cyber, if you're going for a cyber role, or have you
Yeah.
really done the research on that company, and do you like them, their values and their morals and their mission statements, and you know
Hmm.
yeah, they're maybe they're trying to like dig a little bit deeper to see, like, are you really interested in the company, or are you just here for the paycheck? And if you're just here for the paycheck, that's fine. A lot of people are.
Yeah.
That's okay, really.
Yeah, they probably. I think my feeling for that kind of question is you're not going to lose the interview because you say, "Oh, I like the job," or "I like the area," or like you give a kind of bogus answer.
Mm,
You could be. It is an opportunity for you to really stand out, to show that you can either just show that you put the extra time in to research this specific company, research the people you're talking to, or the stuff that they're doing that you think is you can contribute to. If you can see that they've just done a press release and they've announced a new service or a new arm of them that they're building out, and you can say, I want to get into there eventually, or I see myself in 5-10 years being in this part of the company that you do. That is a brilliant answer, because that shows that you kind of have that plan, and you cared enough to kind of look and target it. They want to feel special as well, these interviewers. I think that's probably part of what they're asking for is, hey, I can give you this job, I know a lot about you, but did you even bother to find out who we are? So yeah,
yeah,
it's
man. Yeah, just be charming. And I was listening to a podcast the other day where they were talking about interviews, and there was some crazy stat where they said that if you bond with somebody in an interview setting within the first 15 seconds, then you're already, there's like a certain percentage that you have a good chance to go through to the next stage, because you've created that rapport with somebody. And you
it's make them
you can
laugh, isn't it?
be
Is that the metric? If you can make them laugh in the first, then they
or
instantly
find some common ground.
okay. Hmm.
And you can be sneaky with that. We're OSINT wizards, some of us. So
Don't go
I'm
too
not going
far.
to yeah, I'm not going to go any more into into detail, but you know where you can go to find out some information on somebody.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
that's
thank you
funny,
very
because
much.
I actually support Arsenal as well.
Yeah, yeah. I really love it when they hit that ball in that goal.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
also you can also
yeah.
expose yourself, so watch out.
Defense, defense,
Yeah.
defense.
There's
I
nothing
think
like
that's
being genuine.
NFL.
Yeah. Sports, go
Yeah,
sports. But there's nothing like
yeah,
being genuine, guys. I think that's
yeah.
ultimately it. So like
Yeah,
if
be
you're nervous,
authentic.
it's because you're trying to be something that you're not. That's going to put a lot more pressure and nerves on you. So just be yourself. Realize that's what they're looking for. Robbie is trying to find out who you are by those kind of softer questions. And that is also important to a hirer. As are you going to be? Do you have the ability to succeed, the knowledge to succeed, but are you a person who's going to thrive in my environment, in my team? Are you going to cause me problems? Are you going to bring me solutions? So,
Mm.
Rob, shall we roll out the red carpet, or you want to say anything else?
I'll just end with dig as deep as you can when you're answering these questions and be authentic as you possibly can, because that's what the interviewers are looking for. They're looking for that individuality. They're looking for that divergent nature of somebody. They're not looking for somebody that's just going to follow the crowd or just say what they think that you want to hear.
Yep.
Be
And if you
yourself.
are that kind of person, there are organizations that are looking for more for that. Maybe some banks or some big consultancy firms, not to name anyone out specifically. They want, they look for something slightly different. But yeah, thank you very much, Rob. Very enlightening as always, kind of bring us through those. Cheers for the audience. Having some comments, feedback from them, always appreciate it. They like more fun, but good overall. Are we boring otherwise? I thought we've been hitting this kind of fun energy for a while now. Fair
We're
enough.
trying. Yeah, we'll do some more rapping on the pre-game next week.
Yeah, that warmed us up. Maybe we should get a Patreon and then people can come see us rap beforehand. Or you can just join the school community. That's school with a K /SecOps. You'll find our gold career community where we can help you get that first role. Access to mentors like Rob, who has hired people, who has built up socks and put people in those roles. We are putting people in their security roles and setting them up for success in a career that is going to be with them for life, hopefully. So come see us. We can really be the mentorship and the guidance to push you over the last hurdle and get you that job. Just like in the chat, we got one person who is this close. I'm so close to getting it, and I can't wait for that because that's what we like to see.
This close.
For the audio people, I think you can tell what we're demonstrating there. But yeah, and so that's our sponsor. Head over to school.com/SecOps. If you yourself are an organization who wants to be sponsored wants to have a sponsor segment on a tech podcast, you can email us at team@empiricaltraining.co.uk. And if it makes sense, we might swap you in that segment rather than the one we just did for ourselves. But thank you very much, Rob. Thank you very much to the chat, as always. Not just for what you do today, but what you do day in, day out in that community, supporting each other, sharing the latest trends. We learn as much as from you guys as you learn from us. We kind of talked about that offline earlier. But yeah, any final thoughts, Rob, taking us out?
I was just going to say, we love the Empirical Training school community. Again, it's school.com/cybersec for the free community. It's absolutely thriving in there at the moment. There's a lot of free value that's dropping in, resources, tools, free courses, projects. We're going to drop a course in there in the next couple of days as well.
On the what's that, Rob? Tell them what it is. God, tell them what it is. They deserve
Fundamentals of Cybersecurity.
Yeah. So if you're starting from absolute scratch,
by yours truly.
Yeah, Rob's going to take you, like, he's gone back 10 years when he was starting out his career, moving from professional to football, and he's going to harness that and give you the pieces you need to succeed. So yeah, whether you need that mentorship and guidance from us, or whether you just need a community and some free resources, we've got both available. So hit us up. And Rob,
this was fun, and that is a wrap.
CyberSpace podcast.